Hi, I'm Shana Meyerson with the Yoga of War podcast, here today with political analyst Dalia Ziada. If you appreciate and find value in these important discussions, please consider supporting the show so I can continue to bring you such amazing and esteemed guests. Details are pinned in the comments below. It's 9/11. 24 years ago today, Al-Qaeda brought down the Twin Towers in the worst terrorist attack to ever occur on US soil. The world was stunned and would never be the same. Islamic terror became a prominent global threat, but something remarkable happened. It was a slow creep in response to a very carefully crafted propaganda campaign, but the West started rallying in the terrorist defense. The Red-Green alliance of strange bedfellows began the quest to divide and conquer the West. Decades later, as the world witnessed the savage, bestial Hamas atrocities perpetrated against Israel on October 7th, 2023, it cheered. It actually cheered. 1 month later, TikTok was flooded with celebrations of Osama bin Laden's Letter to America manifesto. The brainwashing was now complete, and legions of useful idiots have been marching to their own demise ever since. As a young woman, Dalia Ziada would likely have been at the front of that pack, calling for death to the Jews into Israel, but something amazing happened. She woke up. She woke up to the mortifying reality of the terror and the hatred she was indoctrinated to believe. And she did something virtually unheard of. She started to think, and her entire world view spun around. Today, Dalia is a fierce supporter of Israel's justified war on terror. To many, her views are controversial. Welcome to a world that can no longer distinguish good from evil. It can be a truly frightening place, but it's people like Dalia who restore faith in mankind and in the kindness of man. Dalia Ziada is an award-winning Egyptian writer and political analyst known for her fearless voice on Middle East geopolitics and security. She has spent 2 decades leading think tanks, advising policymakers, and championing civil rights from the Arab Spring to today. Dalia is a senior fellow at the Jerusalem Center, sorry, I did not sleep at all last night, for Security and Foreign Affairs, a leading voice against extremism, and the author of The Curious Case of the Three-Legged Wolf, with a new book on the changing Middle East on the way. Dalia, yesterday was a very difficult day, and today is a stark reminder of the terror that we all face. Thank you so much for joining me on this poignant anniversary.
Thank you so much for having me, Shana. And I always believe that God has his own plans, and maybe we were destined to meet today and speak about this on this horrible anniversary of 9/11. I mean, to speak especially after what happened yesterday and the horrible murder of Charlie Kirk. Someone needs, to give, to open people's eyes to what's really happening on, and I'm glad that you and I will be doing this today.
Thank you so much. It would be hard for me to think of somebody I would rather be having this conversation with. I watch you every interview that I can find, and every single time I'm so blown away mentally, but my heart melts to see how sincere your kindness is and how much you care about humanity.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So again, of course, for anybody who may not know, maybe some of the younger people or people who don't live in America. So today is 9/11. It's the 24th anniversary of the day that changed the world, and a horrifying precursor to the 10/7 massacre. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the 2,977 innocent people who lost their lives to terror on September 11th, 2001. This was more than horrendous. It was deeply personal. If you had told me that day that any amount of propaganda would one day turn the West in favor of this terror, I would have called you crazy. Dalia, how did the world's moral compass shatter so completely in the shadow of this atrocity?
Yeah, actually, it's let's look back 24 years ago to get the lesson, because actually what was happening, as I always say, anti-Zionism, anti-Israel is anti-Western and anti-American. There is no separation. It's all related. If we look back 24 years ago when 9/11 happened, 9/11 happened exactly 1 year after the eruption of the second intifada in the Middle East. And this was led by Hamas, who encouraged suicide bombing in the name of the Palestinian cause, or the Free Palestine movement. Very similar to what we have been seeing today since October 7. It always starts with the Jewish people. It always starts with Israel, and then the attack widens to include the West and the United States in it. So I lived through the second intifada, and actually, this was the moment when my perception about the whole thing has changed. I grew up in Egypt, like everyone else, believing that Israel is the enemy. The Jewish people are so savage, they eat babies on dinner, you know. Really, I mean, it sounds funny now, but this was exactly what has been taught to us in schools, in mosques, in the media, everywhere. Until when the second intifada happened, we also, very similar to what's happening today, I was an undergraduate student at that time, my first year in university in Cairo, and there were protests on my campus and all the other campuses in support of Hamas, unfortunately, also under the flag of supporting Gaza and against Israel. And the people leading these protests were the Muslim Brotherhood. No surprise, right? And actually, yeah, and I joined the protests just like all the other students. It's a trendy thing on campus. Until one day, after about 2 months of joining these protesters, I saw them burning my own flag, the Egyptian flag, uh, plus the American and the Israeli flag, as part of the celebration they were making, or as part of the protest. They wanted to make a show by doing so. And this was the moment that really opened my eyes to the problem, opened my eyes to the truth that actually these are the evil people, and Israel and the Jewish people are the good people. Israel is simply defending itself against terrorism. This is the story that nobody told me until I was 18 years old. And only 1 year after that, only 1 year after that, when 9/11 happened, it was so shocking to me how big was the gloating over 9/11 by so-called Arab intellectuals, including socialists, Islamists, and so, who were very excited to see the US and the American people being killed in such a savage way as we saw on 9/11. And it's insane. And by the way, this happened before the war in Iraq, before the war in Afghanistan, before all of that. So there was no reason at that time to hate the United States so much. There was no justification for this gloating over the 9/11 attack in the Arab world. But this has to do with the very deeply rooted hatred towards the West that people try to hide and masquerade as sometimes, oh, I'm only criticizing Israel, I'm only criticizing American politics. No, targeting Jewish people in the United States, Jewish Americans, killing them, harassing Jewish students on campuses, and all of that, this is not criticism to the policies of a government in Israel. This is a systematic targeting. And actually, the scariest part here, is when you go deeper into this ideology and you start to read the work of the Muslim Brotherhood top ideologues and how they are describing the importance of using the Palestinian cause, or as they call Palestine, as the glue that brings Muslim communities in the West together and shape them into a force that will destroy the West from within, like a bomb that will destroy the West from within, and apply this to what we are living today. I call it the theater of the absurd. We are living today. Uh, Actually, it's already happening. They are already achieving their plan, and they are not even exerting an effort to achieve it anymore. They have already brainwashed young Americans in the name of progressive left, in the name of socialism or so, and convinced them to do the work for them, to do the work for the radical Islamists, to destroy their own country by their own hands. And sadly, the culmination of this we saw yesterday by the killing of Charlie Kirk. I cannot get the scene out of my head. He died holding his mic in his hands. He died while he was debating, while he was doing the one thing that makes America a great country. And I'm seeing this as someone who was rescued by this great country from my own people who wanted to kill me when I spoke up against Hamas, when I spoke up support of Israel. The United States is the country that rescued me and gave me shelter, gave me a new life. And despite that, and also before that, gave me my education and my career. And it's so sad to see this scene happening because it's not an attack on Charlie as a person, it's an attack on America. Really, no exaggeration. It's an attack on the best virtues of the United States: free speech, the ability to debate, the power of dialogue and disagreement without fearing violent consequences. But unfortunately, it seems that this is not the case anymore.
Yeah. It's one thing that really struck me, and yes, I'm very much in the thick of it when it comes to Israel and Jewish advocacy. But what people, I think the dots aren't being fully connected by certain groups in society, that regardless of whether yesterday's assassination had anything to do with the war in Israel specifically or not, it actually has everything to do with the war in Israel and this red green alliance. And Dalia, maybe you can explain. I don't think people fully understand how long this strategy has been in the works. It's not like 10/7 happened and they're like, oh, okay, look how bad Israel is. It's not even that. This has been going on for 10 years or 20 years since social media happened. The thing about the Muslim strategy that people don't understand, and that makes it very hard for the West to sort of catch up, is the long-term nature. We think in America or in Israel, long-term meaning 1 to 5 years. How long has the long-term strategy of the Muslim Brotherhood to divide and conquer the West from within, as so we are literally consuming ourselves with hatred and division? How long has this strategy been going on? But I still can't understand how the good people of the world were ever convinced that the terrorists are the good guys. I can't, no matter how many times it's explained, I cannot wrap my head around it.
I will start by the last part of your question. How come the world see Hamas as freedom fighters, But the answer is simple. It's all about Al Jazeera TV. It's the huge media machine that Qatar sponsors, Qatar owns, and has completely dedicated to whitewashing Hamas, making them appear as freedom fighters while demonizing Israel in every way they can. And unfortunately, the world has fallen an easy prey for this for many reasons. One of them is that there are no neutral, authentic reporters inside Gaza to tell the truth about what's going on there. Also, it's easy for people to sympathize with the side that is all the time claiming to be the victim. Look, of course, war is ugly. Like, I'm not saying that, war is good. It's okay for women and children to be killed. No, I wish it never happened. And believe me, I pray every day for this war to end so the innocent people or the suffering of the innocent people has to end too. But we have to have an open eye when we are looking at the situation. Yes, there is a war. Yes, there are people dying in the war. But the reason that they are dying in large numbers in the war in Gaza, in particular, has to do with the fact that Hamas leaders who are staying at luxury hotels in Doha and having all means of life, they are purposefully putting their own people in Gaza, the women and the children in particular, in on the front line of the war. So they die in large numbers without any protection. By the way, they refuse to give them protection. So they die in large numbers, and thus they can use their blood as a fuel for their own movement. And by the way, these are not my words. These are the words of the leaders of Hamas, like Haniyeh, like Abu Marzouk, who came out and said, the tunnels, no, we are not going to put civilians in the tunnels. The tunnels are for the militants, not for the civilians, and it's not our responsibility to protect them. But and Haniyeh very clearly said at the beginning of the war, before he was assassinated, he clearly said, we want more and more women and children to die in Gaza so we can use their blood as fuel. So the problem is not that Israel is launching a war and Hamas to defend itself against a brutal October 7 attack that happened, but actually the problem is that Hamas is exposing its own people to death on purpose, so they can use their blood to gain legitimacy and so. So this is the second part of your question. The first part is the most complicated one. Yes, unfortunately, people think that this hatred or this dynamic of hatred towards the Jews and towards Israel only started by October 7 or by the war in Gaza. So it's only a reaction to the war in Gaza. No, it's not. It has started long time ago. Actually, about 40 years ago or more, in 1982, in 1983 and 1991, we saw two documents coming out that they were written by the Muslim Brotherhood in the West, who traveled in the West. But let me go back like a step before that. The Muslim Brotherhood started in Egypt and started as a local movement that used violence to spread the word of Islam from their perspective or their version of Islamic Sharia as a way of living in Egypt, as an alternative to the liberal life in Cairo at that time, in Cairo and Alexandria as the main two capitals of, like the economic capital and the political capital of Egypt. So they wanted to reject this liberal way of life by, actually, the Muslim Brotherhood did not start in Cairo. They started in a very small town in eastern Egypt. And why they started there? So they can brainwash the minds and hearts of the people there that you can be better than the liberals in Cairo only if you adopt our version of Sharia, of radical Islamism. So that's how they radicalized people, and that's how they radicalized normal Muslims, who were not radicalized at that time. And from there started their movement of that actually became the base for all radical Islamist groups we are seeing worldwide, including political groups and terrorist organizations that adopt radical Islamism as their ideology. Then, around the 1950s and 60s, there were massive political changes in Egypt. Egypt became a communist country led by a socialist leader, Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was also, in my opinion, a fascist. And what happened is that he pushed them, he arrested many of them, and many of them had to flee Egypt, and they didn't find another place in the Arab world to take them because they were hated by everyone. So where did they go? They went to Western countries. They immigrated to Europe and to the United States. They did not go there and started to merge into the societies they moved to. Unfortunately, they did not. They still held their own radical Islamist ideology and insisted on or wrote a plan on how to make it the spreading ideology inside these societies and how to continue building their own caliphate system, their big dream of building a caliphate system where Muslims rule over everyone in the world through Sharia, uh, which is their version of Islamic law, a very extremist version of the Islamic law. And thus they needed a plan to unify all the Muslim Brotherhood immigrants in the West and give them a unified cause and a unified goal. Hence, by the 1980s and 1990s, they started to put this strategy on paper and started to circulate among the circles of the Muslim Brotherhood worldwide. The Muslim Brotherhood has a huge network worldwide, by the way. So, what was written in this plan? In this plan was a project that spans over 100 years. 100 years. This is the long term we're speaking about. It's not 5 years, it's not 10 years, but 100 years. And over these 100 years, they will adopt nonviolent strategies because they know violence does not work in the West in order to infiltrate into institutions and infiltrate into the society and infiltrate into the political structure or infrastructure of Western societies, especially focusing, actually, the second document they made in the 1991 was specifically focused on the United States. It was all about how to infiltrate the system into the United States. And how they are doing, and like in summary, how they were planning to do this. First, by narrative manipulation. Second, by using a very, very interesting tool as their weapon to mobilize and gain support and so. And I'll come to this tool now. And the third is by coalition building. Coalition building means aligning groups that are not necessarily Islamists, that are not necessarily even Muslims, but align them with the causes of the radical Islamist movement that's called the Muslim Brotherhood. So, what is the end goal of this? Is to sabotage the West from within. This is their words, by the way. Sabotage the West from within, to subvert the Western civilization, to discredit it, to dismantle it, so they can introduce themselves as the solution, as the alternative to rule the West, to rule over the world. Think about all of that and see what's happening right now. First of all, the coalition building, yes, we are seeing the red-green alliance, radical left and radical Islamists. Finally, they tried, of course, to merge before over other issues like climate change, gender issues, and so they tried, but they couldn't really merge because there are very strong ideological differences. For example, the radical Islamists will not accept this issue of LGBTQ and gender issues, and so that the radical left embraces dearly. So there were some disagreements until finally the Palestine came out. And this is the tool I told you about in number 2 just a few minutes ago. Palestine, don't underestimate this. Don't underestimate this Free Palestine movement or just think about it as, a random reaction or a spontaneous reaction to the war in Gaza. No. Go back and read the work of the main ideologues of the Muslim Brotherhood, like Yusuf al-Qaradawi, and even before him, Hassan al-Banna and Sayyid Qutb, the main ideologues of the group, and also the new ones who are still alive today. All of them focus on Palestine, the Free Palestine, the Palestinian cause, it has many different names for them, as the tool to use to recruit people in the West, to recruit Muslims and non-Muslims in the West. And this is exactly what's happening now, unfortunately. This is exactly how 40 years on since they, or 44 years on since they wrote this plan, look at what's happening now. They are already recruiting the radical left to do the work for them. A few weeks ago, a few months ago, two young people were killed in Washington, D.C., just because they are Israeli and working for the Israeli embassy. And who killed them? Not a radical Islamist, but a radical left. A
Mhm.
radical left. And when he was killing them, he was shouting, "Free Palestine."
Right.
So,
Right.
so it's all related. It's not new. It's not spontaneous. It's all planned. And people need to open their eyes before it's too late. Also, look at what happened yesterday after the killing of Charlie Kirk. If you go to social media, like the news on social media, and look at the comments,
Mhm.
many people, mostly from the radical left and radical Islamists, of course, were gloating over his killing, were celebrating his killing. It
Right.
simply reminded me of what happened on October 7th, when
Yeah.
my own people, the Arabs and Muslims, were celebrating the killing of the Jewish people for nothing, actually, other than being Jewish, other than being Israeli.
I agree. And I, as many times as I aver the fact that I am a registered independent, I am as independent as it gets. I have no party, I have no interest in parties. And yet everybody is pushing me further and further and further and further to the right, which is so ironic because I really am just as critical of the right as I am of the left. But there's this blindness to the fact that the current violence that is throbbing throughout Western society is coming from the left. It just is. And the left is so unwilling to look at it because they see themselves as the purveyors of love and light, that they are unwilling to see how violent in when I see, yes, the video after video after video yesterday of young left lefties, I don't know what else to call them, celebrating. Nobody who cares about people and human rights celebrates the murder of anyone for any reason, particularly just the fact that they disagree with your words. But I think Dalia, I want to touch upon three things that you said that were interesting because it goes back to this honest insanity of this alliance. Because quite honestly, I can create a propaganda campaign to support anything, but there are certain things like vomit flavored ice cream that I don't think I could get anybody, no matter how good the advertising was, to want to run to the store and buy it. So first of all, you said that violence doesn't work in the West when they were strategizing. And yet, what is the allure? We everybody saw what happened on 10/7. If violence does not work in the West, if I remembered the Daniel Pearl incident. And that was the first time that like beheading was just put in the forefront. Like besides like weird stories about cannibals in inner Borneo or whatever. And it was so shocking. Beheading. And yet on 10/7, people could literally look at savages beheading people on screen as they live streamed it themselves. Where is the allure? If violence does not work in the West, how is it working?
It's actually, yeah, when I said, violent, like from the perspective of the Muslim Brotherhood, they knew that violence will not work. Yes, I mean, they knew that it will immediately discredit them if they use violence to achieve their goals, violence in the name of jihad, I mean, to achieve their goals. But so, of course, they did not use that. They did what they call civilizational jihad, a non-violent jihad. And but this does not dismiss the fact that their end goal is violence. Their end goal is jihad. But if you look at the methodology of the Muslim Brotherhood, they are masters in inciting other groups to do the dirty work for them, and they remain as the political non-violent group. Actually, over the history of the Muslim Brotherhood, like the Muslim Brotherhood themselves, do not commit terrorist crimes, but they create factions like Hamas, like Hasm in Egypt. Both of them are designated terrorist organizations. They create the ideology that ISIS, Daesh, and Al-Qaeda and others use to justify and practice violence. And most recently, because of their nonviolent jihad or civilizational jihad in the West, they have also indoctrinated the radical left in the United States into believing that violence is the way. I was listening to some of their videos actually recently because of a research I'm doing on Red Green Alliances with ISGAP. It's so shocking. It's so shocking how they are justifying violence. I mean, the radical left, American radical left, it's not Islamists, justifying violence as the means of resistance, the same way I heard radical Islamists in my region, the Middle East, exactly using the same terminology, exactly using the same justifications to explain why violence is the way. Except that the Islamists in the regions, they call it jihad, and here they call it the fight for freedom or the fight of the oppressed against the oppressor. So it's only a change of words, but the same justifications, the same rules, the same ideas, the same background. It's terrible. It's terrible to see that. So this is the problem we are facing here today, is that violence became legitimate.
Yeah.
Violence or the practice of violence became tolerated and acceptable and politicized.
And
This idea of
celebrated.
anti-American, yes, yes, they are proud of the Shana, they are filming themselves doing it the same way Hamas was filming themselves killing the Israeli people on October 7th. I mean, look at American campuses. How many times have you seen videos of people so proudly filming themselves harassing Jewish students on campus? And considering this a free Palestine thing or a free or something that is going to free the people in Palestine from their perspective from an imaginary occupation that does not even exist. And Palestine, well, Palestine itself does not exist for God's sake, but they don't care. They don't care.
Right.
They just found a platform for their hatred and violence to practice.
Well, there's no question that we live in a post-factual society, and what's even scarier is that it's the people who actually stand for truth who are fighting for a place at the table. That the lies have become so pervasive that you can literally, as we saw yesterday, be killed for speaking the truth and in trying to it's not even about opposite viewpoints. It's about truths and fictions, and people like cannot see the
It's
difference.
anti-Americanism, if you can say it's
Yes.
anti-Americanism. It's simply because he speaks in, or Charlie was sadly speaking in support of this American identity that these people reject the radical left and the radical Islamists. That's why he was killed because he is pushing against their narrative. He was a very strong voice that was pushing against their narrative, and they had to silence it.
Yeah. And when people don't understand how dangerous the left has become, I just point to the fact that if you see literally, if you're just scrolling through social media and all of a sudden you see a US flag, the first thing you think is Republican. Like no Democrat is going to put a flag on their social media page. And that's sad. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Exactly the dynamic that to defend America, to defend Western values, to defend the freedoms that allow these people to scream against the freedoms that they have is it's so hypocritical that it's very indicative of the, I think, imminent fall of the West that I've seen since the beginning of the Obama administration. When the president of the United States starts talking about how bad his own country is, you're in trouble. And I'm not saying this again for those tuning in late or who don't know me. I'm not a Republican. I'm a
Me neither. By the way, I've always identified as a liberal democratic person. I'm not also on the other side, but the problem is that the so-called liberals of today are not liberals at all. And so-called Democrats of today are not democratic at all. They are destroying democracy, actually. And this is terrible. But I don't know. I have a word about Obama, if you don't mind, to disagree with you on that. I believe, well, President Obama was a big inspiration to us in the Middle East, by the way. I mean, very, very. I attended his speech at Cairo University when he first came to office, and he chose Cairo University to speak there. And I believe he was very sincere about promoting democracy and human rights and women's rights as universal values, not only as American values exclusive to certain people. It's a universal values. But what we're seeing today is that this form of classical liberalism is being deformed by the birth of the radical left movement in the past 5 years or so. This is the danger. This is a real danger, believe me. It's not about elite politicians. The danger here is that normal people, ordinary people, are now accepting violence as a way of life, are adopting the ideology of the enemy, Russians, China, and so, who want to destroy the United States, and also of radical Islamists who see the West, the United States, as their biggest target. So these are the real problem, actually.
So as many people might know, Marco Rubio is in the process of hopefully designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. It's funny that you roll your eyes. I literally am wondering how much of a role you had in really pushing this agenda. But here's the thing: should it go through? I mean, the number of cards, this house of cards from Students for Justice in Palestine through CARE, through the whole, everything is going to fall. The terrorist cells that are training within America right now that we know about, that are allowed to be on our soil, which is something that I cannot wrap our head around. But I'm curious, why do you not think he's going to be able to designate the Muslim Brotherhood?
The problem is that, okay, so I've been part of many groups many groups in the Middle East and also here in the United States that have been trying to push this for so long, to push the idea of designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. We're still pushing for that. Personally, I still believe that this is the way, this is what should happen eventually. But the thing is that there are some legal and political obstacles toward this making this happen. And the way several administrations, or actually the two Trump administrations, the first one and the second one, looked at it, is that they are looking at the Muslim Brotherhood collectively. However, what needs to be done actually is, because this group is very clever in hiding, they are very, very clever in escaping persecution, in escaping accountability. One of their tactics is never to be monolithic, is never to adopt one strategy, one plan, one idea, and declare themselves publicly. That's why it's impossible to hold them and say, okay, from here to here is the Muslim Brotherhood, and we are going to designate them. It's impossible right now. So what needs to happen is first to identify who the Muslim Brotherhood is, who are their networks, target these networks, either whatever they call themselves, civil rights groups, student groups, or whatever, target them, punish them, and hold them accountable. And then this will expose the rest of the network, and thus we can hold a figure, a specific figure that we can call the Muslim Brotherhood. This is the Muslim Brotherhood, and we designate it. But so far, unfortunately, they are very good in hiding. It's
Yeah.
almost impossible to do that right now. However, we will continue to push. We will continue to expose the reality, and hopefully this will lead to something in either on the policy level or on the community level.
Yeah. Thank you, Dalia. I want to start talking a little bit more about your personal story. And as a segue, I'm curious. I haven't done the math. I've heard you say a few times not to do the math, so I haven't because I'm a loyal listener. But I do believe you were quite young on 9/11. I'll just leave it at that. I'm wondering because you were in Egypt. Do you remember that day? What were your feelings around it? What were the feelings of the Egyptian people
Yeah.
in general? Sorry, you make these faces. It's so funny because I'm like, well, there's the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was 9/11 like for you in Egypt 24 years ago?
So actually, I remember this day very well. I was having breakfast with my family, and we like opened the news as usual to see what's happening in the world, and they started to speak about this and show the attack, and it was terrible. It was very, very scary. I remember it very well, and like all of us were shocked. But it didn't take so long after that, like a few minutes after, the TV host that was actually saying the news, he was laughing and he was celebrating. He was very happy. He was very excited and started to say things like Allahu Akbar, finally the justice has happened and God is taking revenge for us from America. And I was like, I remember my father at that time. My father died long time ago, actually, but he was there at that scene. He was very open-minded person, and he knew that it's not going to end up well. He knew that it was going to lead to a disaster. And I remember that day I spent the whole day with him. We were watching news, CNN and others, and trying to process what's happening. And I remember this was my first conversation ever about America and its relationship to I was like 18 years old or so, and its relationship to the East, to the Middle East, and why there is so much hatred towards the United States, and whether it is legitimate or not in our region. So this was a very eye-opening conversation. But what I cannot forget at all is all the hatred that was projected at the United States at that time. And for no reason, really. I mean, people who were just doing their life, going on with their life, and they were killed. So yeah, I remember it was not a good day. It was very sad for me, and I had a long time to understand. I had like to. It took me a long time to try to understand what's going on.
Yeah. So, okay, before we move forward, now I want to go way back. Okay, like way back to where you were born. Because your father was a Sufi, and which is a practitioner of mystical Islam. When you were given the name Dalia, it actually really defined your legacy. Can you tell me about the origins of your beautiful name?
Yeah, actually, my father was actually a military engineer. He worked for he was a military engineer, and at that time, the time when my mother was pregnant with me, we just had the peace treaty with Israel. So he was joining a training that was happening at that time. It's actually a joint training between the US and Egypt based on the peace treaty with Israel. It's called the Bright Star. And it has been happening until today, by the way, every 2 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
as a young officer, he joined, and actually one of the other officers that was there, he showed him the photos of his daughter, and his daughter was Dalia also. So my father liked the name so much and named me after her. And but actually, it seems, as we say in the Arab world, everyone has a share in his name. Like you are named this name for a reason. And I realized the reason later on. I remember when I was very young, like, 8 years old or so, and I was like complaining about everything around me. I was like very angry at everything, and I don't like everything, and I just complain, complain, complain. I remember my father, like, stopped me, and one day he said to me, "Stop complaining. Don't complain again. Whatever, whenever, even if you see the whole world around you is a trash, be the flower in the trash." And since then, this word has remained with me until today. He said to me, "You are Dahlia. Dahlia is a flower. You be the flower in the trash." And since then, this has become the background motto, or the motto in my background. Every time I see the world a bad place, I decide to be the flower in this bad place to inspire other flowers to come out. This happened at many, many points in my life during the Arab Spring, after the October 7 attack, and of course, also at the time of the Second Intifada and the 9/11. So yes, this remained with me all my life, and I think it was important. It was important that he said this to me.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I'm
Thank you.
I'm
Yeah.
wondering because there are different branches of Islam. Obviously, everybody now hears Shia and Sunni. Those are like the two, but we don't hear a lot about Sufism.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you could explain a little bit. And in my question, I guess, because I, as a yoga person, we have a lot of mysticism. In Judaism, we have Kabbalah mysticism. The crossovers. Bless you. I don't know if you sneeze, but
Thank you. Thank
bless
you.
you, even if you didn't
Thank
sneeze.
you. Thank you.
That the crossovers between even just studying yoga and in Jewish mysticism has been quite remarkable. And I came to the conclusion when I started like understanding these confluences that mysticism is mysticism. So I'd like to hear a little bit about Sufism, but also I'm curious if you think that your Sufi heritage has contributed to the fact that you are more open-minded, more peace-seeking. You're saying your father
Oh,
was,
definitely. I am a Sufi too. I am a Sufi as well,
yes.
like my father. Yeah, actually, look, when you look at Muslims, many people who are not Muslims, they tend to think that all Muslims are the same. But actually, this is not true at all. To make it easier for you to grasp, and for the audience, imagine there is a spectrum. And on this spectrum are the different types of Muslims. On the very left, we have liberal Muslims, spiritual Muslims like the Sufis, reformist Muslims, people who reject certain things in Islam and they want to reform it. Personally, I belong to this group on the very far left of this spectrum. And then when you go further to first of all, a word on Sufism. Sufism, okay, Islam in its or since its day one was not a spiritual religion. What happened is that Islam actually was a political religion from day one. Prophet Muhammad was not a spiritual leader. He was a military commander. He was a political leader. So, so Islam in its origins, in its first form, was not spiritual. Was not really spiritual. What happened is that over time, when several generations and Islam spread to other places like Turkey and Europe and Asia and so, people started to create other forms of Islam that are more spiritual. But unfortunately, these forms like Sufism is not very popular among the majority general of Muslims. Only certain people who believe in the spiritual side of Islam adopt it. and or in spirituality in general adopt it. And actually, I mean, Sufism is great. It's great. It's a whole world on its own. It's a beautiful way of connecting with God and also connecting with other human beings on the basis of humanism, on the fact that we all are humans, regardless of their religion or background. So yes, it played a big role in making me more not radical. I don't identify as radical at all. I mean, than the average Muslims. More open-minded, I would say, than the average Muslims, because I see the world in a different way. It's not us versus them. It's not the Dar al-Harb versus Dar al-Islam, or the House of War versus the House of Islam, as most Muslims think. But I believe that it's only one house, and we all are humans, and we all belong to the same human family. So this is my likes, think like, on the left of this spectrum. Then when you come to the middle, you have the mainstream Muslims. Many people call them moderate Muslims, but the term is not accurate actually. It's the mainstream Muslims, let's say the average Muslims. And they are the majority of the people on this spectrum. And why I don't necessarily call them moderate, because in recent years we saw that they are so brainwashed by the narrative of radical Islamists who exist on the right side of the spectrum. So on the right of the spectrum, you have all types of radical Islamists, starting first by official Islamist institutions like, Al-Azhar in Egypt. And so they claim to be centrist, but actually they are radical. And they are mainly used as tool. They are not as radical as Al-Qaeda, for example, but slightly radical, so they can control the masses. They can dictate politics, and serve the leaders of the countries they work in. And then after that, we have political Islamists like the Muslim Brotherhood. And then we have Salafists. They are more radical but less violent than the jihad. They adopt exactly the same ideas of the jihadists, but they are more strategic about practicing violence. And then the jihadists at the very end of the on the right side of the spectrum, they are the extremists who formed Al-Qaeda, who formed ISIS, and all the terrorist organizations we see today. And their dream is, they are thinking backwards, actually. Their dream is to go back to the early days of Islam, with the Islamic conquests to other nations and to other peoples and other tribes. And they are the people who are doing, unfortunately, all the violence today under the name of spreading Islam and under the name of defending God and spreading Islam.
Wow. Thank you for that explanation. That really helps a lot to understand all these different terms. I do want to address another thing that I've heard you talk about a few times that shocks me, but particularly given your Sufi background. I'm going to take a step back and talk for a moment just about Judaism, because I can tell you just from personal experience as a Jew who went to a Jewish school, a religious Jewish school, Orthodox Jewish school growing up, and have been a member of Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox shuls. I am like the pan Jew. But I could tell you that as a Jew, when I go to Shabbat services every Saturday, the one theme that is most prevalent in our prayers is peace. Shalom, shalom, shalom. You hear it 100 million times in everything we say. Never have I ever, in any way, shape, or form in my life heard a rabbi preach hatred against any human being ever. Wow. But it did astound me, given what you're telling me, particularly about Sufism, to hear from you and also to see on the internet what does get preached, not just about Israel, but about the Jewish people from the mouths of imams. Can you obviously the fact that you were in Egypt complicates things. You're in the Middle East. It's a different mentality, but could you tell us about the weekly ritual that you experienced in Egypt.
Oh, yes. And it's still happening until today. It's very interesting to me what you said that, in your synagogue, it's always about like the preaching in the synagogue was always about peace. But actually, no, it was the opposite in my experience. Most of the mosques, especially on the Friday sermon, they had a stable prayer against the Jewish people. It's not a prayer, it's a curse, like cursing the Jewish people as a staple part of the sermons on Friday. It's terrible. And actually, I remember it very well. It's Allahumma alayka bil Yahud wa man walahum. It means, may Allah curse the Jews and those who support them. So it's not only the Jews, but anyone who supports them as well. So
America.
it's very
Yeah.
exactly. Or even people like me. If I support the Jews, then I'm also cursed. It's so interesting. I mean, now I'm laughing, but yeah, but it was taken really seriously. And imagine if this is being said to you every Friday, like you go to the mosque, the place you trust the most, you call it the house of God, and of course, everything being said there is very sacred, very true. You cannot doubt it, and this is what is being told to you one Friday after one Friday. Also, the concept of peace, unfortunately, was not a big thing in Egypt. Even the peace treaty, this historic peace treaty we signed with Israel in 1979, it was not called a peace treaty in Egypt. It was called a strategic agreement. Can you believe this? A strategic agreement.
When you say in Egypt, do you mean including official government, like
Yes.
the people who signed it, or just that's what they told the people, or that's what the people told themselves?
Not the people who signed it, but because al-Sadat was assassinated, unfortunately, he's the one who
Sure.
signed it. But the
Sure.
government, yes, the government and the military after him, well, the military until in the year 2022, I remember very well, there was a military exhibition in Cairo. And for the first time, 2022 or 2021, December 2021, if I remember well, I hope I remember well, but it's either December 2021 or 2022 because I attended the exhibition. They for the first time, Israel sent some equipment to be shown in this expo,
Right.
and this was like the first time Israel do that, and we see this. But this was also based on the cooperation that happened between the two neighbors for Egypt and Israel for a decade before that. We saw that the relationship has been warmed already, and the Abraham Accords and everything. So in the opening, in like there was a meeting with media people and think tankers and so, and I was there actually one day before the exhibition started. And someone asked the military spokesperson, like, we are surprised, like, how come the Israeli military equipment and military and defense companies and so are here, what they're doing here? And his response was that, okay, no, make no mistake. This is only political, and Israel will always remain our historical enemy.
Right.
This is a military spokesperson
Amazing.
on the night, on the eve of an expo about that was celebrating regional cooperation between different militaries in the region. So unfortunately, until today, yes, Israel is seen as the historical enemy, and it will always remain the enemy from the perspective of Egyptians, people, and government. And any form of cooperation or pragmatism that happens between Israel and Egypt is unfortunately only a um, form of pragmatic
Right.
cooperation. It's not real partnership.
It's amazing because, in contrast, Israel holds its peace treaties as its crown jewels. And anybody who does not understand that the whole goal of Israel is to exist in peace. That's it. And by the way, that's Zionism. If you're against Zionism, you're against the Jewish desire to return to our homeland and live in peace. And when people accuse Israel of being warmongers and don't even understand like how stringent and how relentless the pursuit of peace has been. And unfortunately, the only way that they've been able to maintain any security is through war, because sometimes, as hard as it is to understand, war is necessary to protect yourself. But the goal has always been peace, and peace is celebrated so prominently in Israel. I'm curious though, Dalia. So now I'm confused. How does this prayer fit with what you say is the furthest left on the Muslim spectrum that you explained to us so beautifully? How does this prayer fit with Sufism then? Or
Oh
like
no, actually, I mean liberal Muslims, Sufis, reformist Muslims, and so they don't care at all about this Israeli-Palestinian conflict or this issue at all, at all. It's never mentioned in our, uh, it's they have they have like a bigger view of the world. They can see the bigger picture.
who
It's
was who was saying the prayer? It wasn't
It's no, it's like average mosques in Egypt, like the mosque
right.
next door, for example.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily go to a Sufi mosque to
Okay.
no,
Yeah.
no, you just go to any mosque to attend the prayer. And
Oh,
even if
got it.
the prayer on Friday is broadcast on TV and broadcast on radio. So yeah, so you don't have to go to a Sufi place to
Ah.
no, it's
Oh, okay. Because I think about it. So in America, you go to a reform synagogue, you go to a conservative synagogue, you go,
oh
and it's
no,
and
no,
it's
not like
very,
this. You
very
can go to
different.
any mosque and pray, even if it's a conservative one. Yeah,
Got it. Okay, cool.
yeah.
So I mean, I want to ask sort of about scripture for a moment, because you obviously you come to this discussion as a proud and a faithful Muslim, and a lot of people ask questions about the violent passages of the Hadith, but I actually would like to ask a question in the absolute other direction about the Quran. Within the Quran, it does state clearly and multiple times that Israel is the land of the Jewish people. Why don't Islamic fundamentalists look to those passages for guidance if they take the Quran to be the literal and ultimate word of God? And if they use it as a pretext for violence, how can they just pass over this inconvenient
You
path?
know, actually, it's very good you asked this question because there is a big irony here. If you go today and speak to any average Muslim young person, or not even young, average Muslim person, and tell them how do you know that Palestine or free Palestine is an Islamic cause? He will tell you it's in our hadith, it's in our Quran, it's in the holy texts. And so most of Muslims today believes that freeing Palestine is an Islamic cause. And if you look at the Quran itself, if you open the book and look and read, there is no mention of anything called Palestine, anything, or
Right.
even anything close to it. Nothing. No mention of that. However, there are in so many locations, there are so many mentions actually all over the book. The stories of Moses and the stories of the Jewish people, and even in these stories they are very clearly saying that this piece of land belongs to the Jews across the Red Sea, is the land of the Jews, is the land of the people of Moses. And it's so clear, like if just people read, it's so clear, like no doubt that this is the land of the children of Israel, Banu Israel. It's there. However, people don't read. But this actually brings the question of how come many Muslims today believes that where it comes from, believes that Palestine is an Islamic cause. Where is it coming from? Actually, it has to do with the indoctrination, once again, that the Muslim Brotherhood did. What happened is that the 1950s and 60s, with Gamal Abdel Nasser taking power in Egypt, he was a communist Uh, his ideology was communism and socialism, and actually he needed to create this pan-Arabism movement to bring all Arabs under his own wings, under his own umbrella, and rule them. He was very fascist. So to do that, it's impossible to unify Arabs. Arabs are not the same. So to unify them, you need to find a common enemy. And what was the easiest enemy to find at that time? It was Israel, the newborn state of Israel. So went on delegitimizing Israel. He was, by the way, one of the very first people who invented this thing called Palestine. Palestine
Hmm.
is an invention of Gamal Abdel Nasser. And he created a state that was run from Cairo and it has had no existence in reality. That's called Palestine, and it was a client state run from Cairo by, and he actually assigned some people from Gaza, who was at that time a municipality of Egypt, and he called them like the government of this Palestine state. Okay, so this is how Palestine was created. It
Hmm.
never really existed. It's just an imaginary thing that was happening in Cairo, like it's or that was run from not even run. It's something. It's someone like drew a picture and posted on a wall and said this is Palestine, but it never really existed. So when Gamal Abdel Nasser did that, he succeeded. It was successful. I mean, the labeling Israel because of his socialist and communist ideology, he labeled Israel as the agent of Western imperialism in the region that the United States has put in the region to dismantle our Arab unity and all of these, great slogans. And so he was able to mobilize support by Arabs around his pan-Arabism movement by making such claims about Israel and labeling Israel as an enemy. Then in the 1979, the Islamic Revolution in Iran succeeded in taking over a country as big and important as Iran. So this inspired other Islamist groups in the region, including Sunni groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, for example, and to play a bigger political role, to seek political role. And actually, they started to work on that. And how can they do this in the 1980s? They looked at the closest successful example, the example of Gamal Abdel Nasser. They want also to unify Arabs, but this time not around an Arab agenda against the Israel, the entity that represents Western imperialism. But no, we will unify Muslim Arabs against Israel, and this time we will not use the Western imperialism thing, but we will call Israel the enemy of Muslims. And we will call Israel the country that hijacked or the state that hijacked our Muslim holy sites, like the Jerusalem. And this was the moment, by the way, they started to claim that Jerusalem and
Hmm.
Al-Aqsa Mosque and so are Muslim holy site that the Prophet Muhammad, like thousands, hundreds of years before, preached that we should take. And they invented even some ideas that he was praying towards Jerusalem and then he changed it towards Mecca and changed his face towards Mecca, and so many stories, so many details. But long story short, they made it. This in the 1980s was the time when they turned it into an Islamic cause. And thus, all the Muslims today, not all, the majority of Muslims today believes that Palestine was mentioned in the Quran, and we are on the mission to liberate our Muslim holy sites from the hands of the Jewish people who took over this land that belonged to Muslims before them, because the Prophet said it's a land of Muslims, although he did not say anything of that because they did not know actually at that time anything about something called Palestine at the time of the Prophet. So it's so funny. I mean, it's so so it's not funny. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
black comedy. It's funny in a sad way
Yeah.
to look at how people are so naive, so uneducated about their own religion, and they are thus being used as an easy prey by radical Islamist groups like the Muslim Brotherhood.
And how, Dahlia, do you personally get through to other Muslims when they're so indoctrinated against these thoughts? I mean, you represent um, tolerance and in kindness and in brotherhood of man, which are ideals that seem to have been somehow lost in the doctrine. How are you personally reaching out more specifically to the Muslim world, and what has been that reaction?
I tell you, actually, I'll give you something that may give you some hope. I'll tell you something that may give you some hope is that at the same time, I was receiving death threats on my way out of Egypt, like escaping for my life after I was attacked after October 7. I was also receiving messages of support from young Arabs and Muslims who were telling me, you're doing the right thing. We 100% support you. We believe in what you say, but we just can't go out and say it. So these people do exist. And as my dear friend Lai Sharif always liked to say, we are the growing minority in the Middle East, which is real. There are so many people like me and who believes that why we are fighting against Israel doesn't make any sense. We need to make peace with them. We need to live in peace and so. But the problem is that these are not the loudest voices. The loudest voices are the voices of the evil. The voices of the evil are so organized and so loud that they are covering over everyone else. However, on an individual level, I try my best actually to give people, young people in particular, the same educational experience I had when I was their age that changed my life and my perception about Israel and about the Middle East in general. Uh, and this is through education. And actually, I'm so proud to say in the past year, I was able to visit 58 campuses in the United States and speak with students from all backgrounds about these issues to give them the true version of things about Islam and Islamism, sorry, about Middle East geopolitics, about all these issues. And I can say it worked. It worked with several of them. I was able to change their mind about things. I was able to make them see things in a clear light. And actually, I can also say I won some fights against the Akufia groups on campuses, on the American campuses. And yeah, it's a fight. It's a long fight. It's a long fight, and it will take years, by the way, to do it, to win. But we have to keep fight. We have no other options. We have to keep fighting on all fronts, including on the front of changing hearts and minds.
And thank you so much for being a leader in that fight, Dahlia. A lot of people, I think, do not actually understand or know your story. So you've alluded to it a few times, but if we can just for a moment, because I think it's so important for people to understand exactly who you are, where your heart is, where your mind is, and also, I said that you're a proud Muslim. You're also a proud Egyptian, which makes the story a little sadder. So one thing that was interesting to me about October 7th, a day that changed really the entire world, whichever side you're on, whatever you believe in, nothing's going to be the same. But I was surprised to hear your world actually wasn't shaken for 2 days until October 9th.
Yeah.
Before people jump to any conclusions of why that was, could you explain why October 7th wasn't the day, but October 9th was?
Oh, yes. Actually, when October 7 happened, it was not appropriately reported in our media. Actually, what was reported in our media is that it was only a clash between Israeli soldiers and Hamas militants. And if you live in the region, you know that this is a stable piece of news that you would hear almost every week. Okay, oh, just another clash, between Hamas and Israel. So it's not a big news. And actually, they were purposefully, even including on TV stations that are not Al Jazeera, like the Egyptian TV, for example. They were purposefully trying to portray Hamas as, to whitewash Hamas, to portray Hamas as so nice people. They did not touch any civilian. They only attacked soldiers, and they were successful, and everyone is celebrating that Hamas, is doing this big victory. And so it was horrible until actually a couple of days later, I was invited. I was, before that, of course, before October 7, for many years, over 15 years, I've been working on Muslim Jewish dialogue, Arab Israeli dialogue, and I had so many friends in Israel and from Jewish communities worldwide. Of course, everyone was overwhelmed. They didn't have the time to tell about what was happening there. So yeah, we only depended on Arab media to learn what was happening. I was in Egypt at that time, and then I was invited to by the Israeli embassy in Cairo. With them also, I was leading a think tank at that time and doing a lot of work with them on Arab-Israeli dialogue and geopolitical issues. And so they sent me an invitation uh, to speak to us in Arabic, uh, including to us, I mean journalists, writers, think tankers, people, and it's a video conference in Arabic organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Israel and the Ministry of Defense. And they are going to show us what happened on October 7th. I said, okay, let's see. And actually, this was part of why they are trying to explain to the Arab audience they have to get into Gaza and crush Hamas. They are trying to give the reason why they have to do this. So I attended the conference, and I did not really expect that I will see these horrors that I have seen. They showed us footage, and first responder eyewitnesses told us about what happened. Oh my God. It still hurts. It still hurts until now. It was terrible. Uh, I wouldn't say what I saw, but it was terrible. It's things that makes you think like, why would any human do this to another human? People were brutally attacked, not just murdered. They were tortured before being murdered, and including women, children, and elderly, even animals, it's, oh my God, it hurts so much. It hurts so much until now. So at that time, I felt compelled to speak up. I felt compelled to tell my own people that no, you're wrong. You should not be celebrating. You should be ashamed of what happened. So I went on to my social media platforms, and I made a couple of media interviews speaking about what I saw and trying to educate my people that October 7 was a horrible, horrible terrorist attack on innocent people who were literally in their pajamas inside their homes. Of of Hamas are terrible people. They are not even people. They cannot be humans. They cannot be humans. I mean, I still believe in humanism. I still believe in humans. These cannot be humans. So yeah, so I have to speak up. I have to go out and say something about what happened. And I said, and unfortunately, the backlash turned against me. I mean, I immediately after that, the Egyptian state-owned media, the radical Islamists. It was terrible. Radical Islamists, actually, the Salafists, they came to my family house looking for me. They wanted to punish me, kill me, or do violence to me just because I said October 7 was a terrorist crime in the media. And I condemned Hamas and said the fact that they are terrorist organization. Then eventually, in a matter of a few days, 3 or 4 days, I found myself trapped and attacked from every side. People want to kill me. Several legal claims filed against me, accusing me of espionage to Israel, committing high treason, threatening Egypt's national security, crazy things like that. And the public prosecutor in Egypt, the general attorney, is taking them seriously. He's not dismissing the claims, he's investigating into them. and even issuing an arrest warrant for me. It was horrific. So I had to run very quickly, and thank God, I had friends abroad who were able to help me. And actually, the two main people who helped me were Jewish. A friend of mine, a very long-term friend of mine in New York, and another friend in Israel. They came together and formed a team that was able to evacuate me from Egypt in 5 hours before
Wow.
I'm being killed or imprisoned. So it's amazing. I mean, they could have just gone with their life. I mean, they have their own problems already. They have already dealing with the consequences of the October 7 attack, but no. They considered me part of their family, and they wanted to rescue me too. So I will always be grateful to them. I literally owe them my life, you know. And the love I saw from the Jewish people when I came here, the Jewish community in the United States, is also beyond words. I mean, I cannot even explain in words. People who didn't even know me, they came to me and they said, "No, we're not letting you, uh, you know, I came with nothing. I came only with two suitcases and one backpack. This is everything I could bring with me from Egypt. My whole life was left back there. And on the way, I was thinking like, oh, I'm doomed. Like, I'm now, I'll be a homeless person in the United States. But no, thanks to the Jewish people actually and the Jewish community here, including, I'm telling you, people who never knew me before. They came to me and made sure that I can preserve my dignity while continuing to fight this fight, you know. So I'm really grateful for all these people, and this also gave me a message that I was doing the right thing. I was not wrong when I stood up against Hamas. I was not wrong when I I I I thought that it's morally, it's a moral obligation actually to support Israel in its fight against this terrorist organization. And the fight is not over yet. We're still fighting together. We're still doing it together until we win.
Dalia, you take my breath away. Literally, I listen to you, and I pray that in my life I could have the same moral clarity and conviction. The fact that you remark that these two people who had other things to deal with went out of their way to save you. Dalia, you're risking your entire life to defend a people that you were brought up to despise. It's remarkable beyond words and beyond expression. And I have to say that I wanted to talk to you about a lot of political things, but the truth is, Dalia, all I want to talk about really is you. And we're closing in on an hour and a half. So what I would love to do is, if you're open to it, maybe invite you back on another day that we could talk about what's actually happening in the Middle East. Because right now, I think what's happening in your heart and your soul is just so much more important. Um, I feel naive in that it didn't even occur to me that you came here with nothing. It never even occurred to me. So Dalia, I want to know where can people find you and how can they support you?
Oh, thank you so much, Shana. Actually, I would say on my website, daliaziada.org, and also on all social media platforms at Dalia Ziada. So you can follow me, you can see the political content, that maybe we couldn't discuss today, but it's important. And always keep in mind that it's our fight against the forces of evil, and we have to be together to continue this fight, to stay together and to keep moving forward.
Is
And
there
thank you so much, Shanna, for having me today. It's really wow, it was a really special experience, so thank you.
It really was. I can't think of a guest I'd rather have on this special day. And I'm going to ask now more pointedly. Is there a way that people can send you money if they want to support you financially?
Oh, thank you. This is very kind of you, but actually I will very soon start a Substack, so
Okay,
maybe this will be one way to do it. Yeah, thank you so much for suggesting this. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question and then I'm going to let you go. I can only imagine how many people want to talk to you today. The last question is, what do the words Am Yisrael Chai mean to you?
Oh, Amin. I would say Amin, yes, I'm Israel Chai, and I'm saying it with an Arabic accent. Am Israel Chai, not Am. Yeah. Yeah, but it's actually, yeah, of course. I mean, Israel has been a great state. It has been a great neighbor to my own country, my homeland, Egypt. It has been a creator, a builder in our region and in our world. It's a country that only wanted to exist and wanted to make everything around it a better place. So yes, I'm Israel Chai, of course, and I hope the best for Israel and the Jewish people, and I hope they win this fight against the evil, evil Hamas.
Thank you, Dalia. Every win that we have is largely in part to heroes like you. So thank you for joining me, and Am Yisrael Chai.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.